quite a pleasure to address Southerners once more. My topic is humour and paradise. Now, why paradise? Because it is said that only those people deserve paradise who have made others laugh. And William Shakespeare is supposed to have said it. Now, my talk will be about funny people, funny events, funny statements, drawn from journalism, literature, cinema, theatre and everyday life.
Also Rotary.
I'll begin with a Rotary anecdote. Now, many years ago, US President Woodrow Wilson, he had his early morning walk and he saw some construction activity going on and he sat at a bench there to take for a better view. And then the security guard came charging, "Who are you? Why are you sitting here?" Yes, I'm the president. So I said, "This is president of what?" "I'm the president of the United States." "Oh, get lost. I thought you were the Rotary president and I made you sit here." Because that construction company, the president was a Rotarian, the president of that company. Now, all of you have heard of Khushwant Singh. Now, you may have heard this joke before. A great editor was known for jokes and laughter. Once he got a letter from Canada, and the address on the envelope merely said, "Khushwant Singh, bastard India." Just Khushwant Singh, bastard India. And it was delivered to him promptly, though the envelope had no address, no street name, not even the name of the city. He said, Khushwant Singh said, apparently the post office knew the name and address of the biggest bastard in India. Now, Khushwant Singh was fond of Scotch, but at one time liquor was very scarce in India. And he thought he should tap foreign embassies. Now, foreign embassies had this habit of gifting a crate of liquor during Christmas or New Year to top editors. So he thought he would remind the American ambassador of his presence. He sent an autographed copy of his latest book, he had just published a book, to Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who was then the US ambassador. And Moynihan acknowledged it promptly and said, "Thank you very much for your book, I'll go through it, and please call me when you are next in Delhi." So Khushwant Singh was visiting Delhi the very next week. He called Moynihan. He said, "Very good, you come for lunch." And Khushwant Singh thought, well, now I'm going to get my crate of liquor. And they had a very enjoyable lunch, and Khushwant Singh was about to take leave. Moynihan said, wait, there's something I want to give you. And Khushwant Singh thought, well, now my crate of liquor is coming. But what Moynihan presented him was not liquor, but a copy of his latest book. Now, let me give you a few delightful stories about Harry Miller, he was an Englishman, who was the photo director of the Indian Express. Now, Ramnath Goenka, the owner of the Indian Express, was close to him, and that's why he got the fancy title of photo director of the entire Indian Express group of newspapers. Now, a friend of his from England, also a photographer, once was visiting Chennai, visiting India actually, and he handed over Harry Miller a bunch of precious negatives. These were negatives of luscious ladies in the nude. Now, he had these pictures. He said, "Now I'm touring Kanyakumari and other places for 3 months, so I don't want to be carrying these negatives everywhere with me. So you keep them safely, and when I come back after 3 months, I'll take them from you." Harry Miller said fine, he kept them in his cupboard. Now at that time, Miller's boss, Ramnath Goenka, was running an orphanage. And he told Miller, "These boys are wasting their time, you teach them photography." And Miller said fine. So at one stage, he had to teach them processing and printing. So he told the kids, well, you shot something yesterday, you did some shooting yesterday, you do the processing and printing now. I'm going out, I'll be back in a couple of hours. So Miller came back in a couple of hours and he found all the kids giggling, huddling around something at the floor. What they had done was they discovered the steamy negatives in the cupboard, the new negatives, and they printed them. And they had a great time admiring them. You know, Miller has an explosive temper, so I don't know what he did actually. But he told me this anecdote when we were going on a taxi to Kanyakumari. He said, look, well, don't write about this because Ramnath Goenka will kill me. But he said, after I am gone, you do what you like. So Miller's gone and Ramnath Goenka is gone, so I think there's no harm in sharing this anecdote.
So you have the negatives. We will have a question and answer session, and there's also a quiz program. So please reserve your questions. Don't disturb the flow.
He wants to know whether negatives are there with you for safeguard.
So let me give you another Miller anecdote. It's about his encounter with the temple elephant in Rameswaram. Now, the authorities had arranged a special darshan of the temple for this white man who was a big man. And he was bare-chested. And in fact, even he had a dhoti, just a dhoti, not even underwear. And the elephant gave him a salute. And so Miller was encouraged to draw close. And suddenly, Miller says maybe the elephant had not seen a white man before. It twirled its trunk and removed his dhoti. So he was fully nude. But being a white man, he wasn't embarrassed. He said there was a photographer, a stupid chap. He should have taken a photograph of me. But he closed his face and turned around. And so that immortal moment was lost. Now, this is a story about the Maharaja of Mysore, Jayachand Raja Vadayar. And it happened during the British days. He was in London on some business and he walked into the showroom of a Rolls-Royce car. Now he asked a salesman about the price of a Rolls-Royce car. And those days Englishmen were arrogant and they were disdainful of Indians. He started guffawing. He said, this Indian guy wants to know the price of this Rolls-Royce car. So he just left, Chamraja Vadayar, he just left. Then he came back to India and through official channels he imported 2 Rolls-Royce cars. And he used them to collect garbage from the Mysore Palace garden. And the London Times carried a photograph of the Rolls-Royce cars being used to collect garbage. And it carried a big headline, Rolls-Royce cars are garbage collection cars in India. And then 2 top Rolls-Royce men flew to India. They said, Excellency, why are you doing this? You are hurting our reputation. And he said, no. I think Rolls-Royce is very efficient for garbage collection. And in fact, I have a very big garden. You give me 2 more cars. And in fact, they said, we'll buy the car back from you at 50% profit if you like. He said, no. In fact, I want 2 more cars. So it is said that from that day, if any Indian walked into the Rolls-Royce showroom, they treated him like a Maharaja. Now, this is about Krishna Menon and Time magazine. B.K. Krishna Menon was India's defense minister. Now, Americans disliked Menon because he was considered anti-American. And in 1962, Time magazine did a cover story on him. Now, the cover picture showed a snake hissing behind him. And the story showered him with epithets. He was described as a malevolent-looking, coffee-colored bachelor. A malevolent-looking, coffee-colored bachelor. In fact, a friend of mine, a fellow journalist, he was so taken in with that description that he described anyone he knew as a malevolent-looking, coffee-colored bachelor. And he was also described by Time magazine as a Mephistopheles in a Savile Row suit. Mephistopheles in a Savile Row suit. As devil incarnate, as a snake charmer with hooded eyes. No one can better Time magazine when it comes to giving names. Now, Time was very happy to receive a letter from India praising the article. And it was from Kerala. It was sent jointly by 4 people. The letter said, it was a nice article, we agree with all that you have said. And the names, and there were 4 names, they were all swear words, unprintable letters of abuse in Urdu. And Time magazine didn't know it, they thought they were Indian names. They're terrible names like Marpetut and all that. And Time magazine, there was an uproar in the Middle East and in Pakistan and so on. And Time magazine had to withdraw thousands of copies from all over the world. So the letter writers from Kerala were very happy to have punished Time magazine for that article on V.K. Krishnan. Now, here's a joke about brains. A person lay seriously ill in hospital, and the doctor said his only hope is a brain transplant. A male brain will cost $5,000. A female brain will cost $200. And the relatives of this dying man, though he was dying, they were angry. He said, "Why this distinction? Why should a female brain cost so much less?" And the doctor said, "You see, it's standard pricing procedure. Female brains cost less because they have been used. Women use them. Male brains are rarely used, so they are fresh and they cost more." Now for yourself, man. Now humor differs, standard of humor differs from place to place. Now what's the difference between British humor, American humor and Indian humor? Now British humor is a bit subdued, often understated. American humor dominates show business worldwide, cinema, drama, theatre. Indian humor is heavily slanted toward personalities and castes or communities. Let's consider a few examples of American, British and Indian humor. First, British humor. Now, Samuel Johnson was considered the literary dictator of the 18th century. Now, he was the person who organized the first English dictionary. Now, while this work was going on, he wooed a lady much older than him who had helped him to bring out the dictionary. He proposed to her. She said, "Why do you want to marry me? I have no money, I have no connections." And an uncle of mine was hanged. And Samuel Johnson said, "Look, I have no money either, I have no connections, and no uncle of mine has been hanged so far. But I have many relatives who deserve to be hanged." So they got married, and it's one of the happiest marriages in literature. Now there is strong anti-Scotland sentiment in England. Maybe it's a bit like, not as bad as anti-Pakistan sentiment in India or anti-Indian sentiment in Pakistan. But there is anti-Scotland sentiment, and Johnson shared it. He forever had digs against the Scots. Now, his dictionary had an amusing definition about oats. He said, "Oats are eaten by horses in England, and they are eaten by men in Scotland." But one of Johnson's huge literary admirers was Samuel Boswell. And Boswell actually wrote a biography of Samuel Johnson, which is considered one of the best biographies. Now, Boswell was irritated by Johnson constantly having a dig at Scotsmen. He said, "Look, sir, you must remember that God made Scotland." And Johnson said, "That's true, but he made Scotland, God made Scotland for the Scots." And he said, "Comparisons are odious, but God made hell too." So you couldn't get the better of Samuel Johnson. Now, India's favorite British humorist is Wodehouse, of course. There are Wodehouse clubs in India, far more than Wodehouse clubs in the UK. Now, in one Wodehouse novel, the chief character, Lord Emsworth, is put off by a pompous speech. There is a person who describes his proudest moment. And he takes the mic and he says, "My proudest moment was when my pig won the first prize in a pig show." So that was his way of puncturing pomposity, and that Wodehouse often did. Now, American humor generates full-throated laughter. There's nothing subtle about it. Now take this example. There's a rich 80-plus old man, a farmer. He tells his friend that he's getting married to a gorgeous 20-year-old girl. And the friend thinks this 80-year-old man can't satisfy this 20-year-old girl. And he tells them, he thinks that if there's a young man who lives with them, he can keep her happy. So he tells this 80-year-old man, "Look, you have a big farm and now you don't have the time to manage it. You engage an assistant." And he said, "Yes, that's a very good idea." Now, 10 months later, the friend meets this old man. He asks, "How are you doing?" "Fine, my wife is pregnant." "Oh," he says, "very good, very good. And how about that farm assistant I had?" Because he was sure this farm assistant is responsible. So how is your farm assistant doing? Yeah, but she's pregnant too. So I'm sure you've heard of the famous Marilyn Monroe joke. Now, her nude photograph in a calendar rocked the world. And her mother asked, Marilyn, did you have anything on? She said, yes, yes. What did you have anything? Because your photograph shows, I had the radio on. Now, here's a jewelry joke. Now, a young man walks into a jeweler's shop with a beautiful young woman. And he tells the jeweler, I want a lovely ring for this lady. And he says, of course. And he brings out a beautiful ring that costs $5,000. This man says, you don't understand. I want it to be the most beautiful ring in the world, something unique. And he brings out a ring that costs $50,000. And this man says, yes, this is good, I'll take it. And he says, how are you paying? He said, I'll give you a check, but this is Saturday evening, the bank won't accept it. So you deposit this check on Monday, and you can give me the ring after the bank cashes the check. And he says, fine. And on Monday, the jeweler phones this man. Look, you're a cheat. You gave me a check, but the bank says there's no money in your account. He says, yes, there's no money in the account, but the lovely girlfriend of mine, she thought I was presenting her with a wonderful ring. So I had a lovely, glorious weekend. Now we turn to Indian humor. Now you've all heard of I.S. Johar. He was a very talented comedian. He was an actor too. He once recalls an incident from a train journey. He was in a train with a Bengali couple, and they had a 5-year-old kid. And they had a nice conversation. And then the lady pulled out a tin of selective gulab jamun. And the lady had gulab jamun, the husband had gulab jamun, and they gave gulab jamun to the boy. But they ignored Johar. And so they were all eating gulab jamun, he felt bad. Now the train passed through a tunnel, and suddenly Johar grabbed the gulab jamun from the boy. And ate it. He started howling. And the parents asked the kid, what happened? She said, no, somebody, I don't know, I lost my gulab jamun. And he said, Johar said, you see, there are some mosquitoes here, some mosquito must have been there. And the train passed through a second tunnel, and Johar again grabbed the gulab jamun. And again the boy started howling. Now, there was a third tunnel, but this was a short tunnel. So I.S. Johar again pulled out the gulab jamun, and he was caught red-handed. And the Bengali couple said, aren't you ashamed? You have seized a sweet from a kid. And he said, yes, but then you should be ashamed. What about Bengalis are known for their hospitality? You have been eating gulab jamun, you didn't give me. And the lady said, yes, here is some gulab jamun. Now there was another train accident, a train incident. This during Johar's school days. Now he was a bit of a bragger, and he used to brag about himself. No, this was a third-class compartment, and his neighbors were a village couple and their teenage son. And the villager asked Johar, what are you doing, beta? Are you in school? He said, no, I'm an inspector of police. I got promotions very fast in school, college. I'm an inspector of police. And the villager said, very good, very good. And then he told his son, look, this man, this young man, he seems to be just as old as you. He's an inspector of police. You must learn from him. Now, the next day, Johar was at school again, and he did some mischief, and he was standing up on the bench. And suddenly, this village couple walked in with their son, and they had some business in school. And Johar tried to hide, but he was standing up on the bench. And then suddenly this boy said, look, Papa, that inspector of police is standing up on the bench. And the teacher asked, what inspector? Then he said, no, he's an inspector of police, isn't he? We met him on the train and he said he was an inspector. So the teacher boxed his ears and he said, no, the only thing he has to do with policemen is that policemen will punish him. Now, here's a joke about Moraji Desai. So, of course, Morarji Desai is known to people of my age and who are 60, 70 and so on. He was the Prime Minister earlier, he was the Chief Minister of Bombay. Now, an American journalist once interviewed him about his likes and dislikes. He asked Morarji Desai, "Sir, you are against meat, you are against liquor, you are against sex outside marriage. What do you think about dating?" He said, "Dates? I don't have anything about dates or any other fruits." But Morarji Desai, there was once a Humour article in the Illustrated Weekly about the 10 biggest bores in India. The 10 biggest bores in India. It was written by a BP contractor who is famous as a Busy Bee. He wrote under the pseudonym Busy Bee. And he wrote an article on the 10 biggest bores in India. And he said the biggest bore was Morarji Desai because not merely was a bore himself, but he made laws to bore everyone. For instance, before becoming the PM, he was the Chief Minister of Bombay. And he made it a law that all entertainment, all public entertainment should cease at 10 o'clock. And at that time, Filmfare was holding its annual awards function. And you know, Filmfare awards functions go on till midnight, 1 o'clock. They start getting hot one day around 10:30, 11. They said, what to do? The Chief Minister said, no entertainment after 10. And someone had a bright idea. He said, we'll make Morarji Desai the chief guest. Then he'll allow us, because as chief guest, he'll be courteous to the host. But they didn't know Morarji Desai. He made a speech and everyone clapped. And he said, it's 9:30 now, we have to wind up in another half an hour. They said, sir, Filmfare Awards functions go on till 12:30. He said, I don't know what happened in the past, but you have to wind up at 10 o'clock. I'm the Chief Minister, how can I break my own law? So they had to wind up. He said, you can continue tomorrow. What's wrong? so the awards function got over at 10. And it was continued the next day from 10 a.m. And it's the first time in the history of Filmfare that the Filmfare Awards functions were split between 2 days. Now there's some cricket jokes. Now cricket is a religion in India. Now Shamila Tagore once tried to call her husband the Nawab of Patauti. And they said, madam, a cricket match is on and your husband, the Nawab of Patauti, he's batting. Shamila said, no, don't, I'll hold on, he usually gets out quite quickly. There's a wonderful anecdote about Gavaskar, and this is positive. Now, he had a great reputation in the West Indies because he always had big scores in the West Indies. And once a group of spectators, 2 spectators, they had a bet for $100. And one of them said, Gavaskar would score more than the 2 West Indian openers. Now, India batted first and Gavaskar was out for 1. So this chap thought he had lost his bet. He gave $100. But then West Indies started batting and both openers were out for 0. So this man got his money back plus $100. And Gavaskar is very fond of this. It's a true story, not a joke. Now here's a Gujarati joke. There's an Arab who is injured. He needs a blood donation. It's a rare blood type. A Gujarati is found, he donates blood and saves his life. The Arab rewards the Gujarati with a Mercedes car, a house and some jewelry. And he's very happy, of course. 5 years later, the Arab needs blood again. And the Gujarati rushes and he comes to his rescue and donates blood again. And he gives the Gujarati a box of almonds. And he says, last time you gave me a Mercedes car and jewelry and a house. Oh, now just a box of almonds. He said, yes, you donated blood and it was Gujarati blood. No, now I have Gujarati blood in my veins. So, on some Tamil humor, you've all heard of Rajnikant jokes. Here are some select Rajnikant jokes. Rajnikant does not need a watch, he decides what the time is. One day Rajnikant bit an apple and threw it away. That bitten apple became the logo of Apple and Company. And Rajnikant once kicked a man who irritated him. He became the first man to land on the moon. What's the email address of Gmail? It is gmail@rajnikant.com. And when Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, he found 3 missed calls from Rajnikant. He was not even born then. Now, one day Rajnikant signed a check and the bank bounced. Rajnikant and the sun stared at each other. Rajnikant and the sun stared at each other. The sun got blinded and moved away. Rajnikant's tears can cure cancer, but unfortunately Rajnikant never cries. He once ordered idli at McDonald's and got it. Rajnikant can kill 2 stones with 1 bird. He brought a German fighter plane once. How? He just pointed his finger at it and said bang, and the plane fell down. The speed of light is 186,000 miles per second, but it is slower than Rajnikant. Now, there's someone's secret of a successful marriage. No? There's this famous couple. They are celebrating the golden jubilee of their marriage. And a pressman asked this man, what's the secret of your happiness? Because you've been married for 50 years and you are such a harmonious couple. And he says, it's a horse. I said, a horse? How? He said, during our honeymoon, we visited a games resort. And my wife is fond of horse riding. And she was given a smart horse to ride. And she was knocked down. And she told the horse, this is warning number 1. And she got on top of the horse again. And after a few steps, she again fell. The horse threw her down. And my wife told the horse, this is warning number 2. And 5 minutes later, she was knocked down again. And she pulled out a revolver and shot the horse dead. And this man was shocked. He said, how can you kill the horse? How can you kill the horse? What has the horse done? And the wife coolly looked at him and said, this is warning number 1. And he says, from then on, we never had any arguments. Now, here's another joke from an American setting. A man calls home and an unknown woman picks up the phone. And she says she's the maid. So we don't have a maid. He said, yeah, but your wife hired me this morning. This okay, now let me talk to her. She says, the maid is embarrassed. She says, look, she's upstairs in bed with someone. I thought he was madam's husband, but he's in bed. And he's furious. He says, look, do you want to make $100,000 in a few minutes? She says, yes, I'll do anything for $100,000. He says, there's a revolver in my drawer. You pull it out and you kill that faithless wife of mine, and you kill that rascal. So on the phone he hears 2 gunshots. And she says, yes, I have done it, now what? He says, now you throw the revolver into the swimming pool, I'll handle the bodies when I come. He says, what swimming pool? There's no swimming pool here. He says, what, isn't this number 4235581? She says, no. And he puts the phone down. And someone told me, fortunately, this can happen only in America, not in India. And the best 2-line joke about a husband and a wife is a remark by the wife. And she says, my husband and I divorced each other over religious differences. He thought he was God, I didn't. Now, there's a couple and a dentist. Now, they enter a dentist clinic and he says, look, I'm in a dreadful hurry because I have a golf match. You forget the anesthesia and all that, you just pull the tooth out quickly. He says, oh, that's very brave of you. You don't even want an anesthesia for the... Yeah, tooth pulling, that can be painful. He says, doesn't matter, you just pull the tooth out. He said, okay, where is the tooth? He turns and says, come honey, show your tooth. So it's always easy to be brave at the expense of somebody else. Now here's a joke about a priest and an auto driver from Chennai. one priest named Robert Mitchell, he dies. He waits his turn at Heaven's Gate. And ahead of him is Pondy, an auto driver from Chennai. And he's wearing a loud shirt and colored jeans, and he's full of expletives, loose talk and rash talk. Now God consults Pondy's record book and he says, oh, here's a silk robe and a gold scarf. You enter the gates of heaven. Now it's the priest's turn, and he says, I've been the head priest of this important church for 40 years. And God consults his record book. And he says, well, here's a cotton robe, you also enter heaven. He says, what? This uncouth auto driver who used to swear, he drives so rashly, and you give him a silk robe and a gold scarf, and I'm supposed to have only a cotton robe? Is he a better man than me? He says, you see, it's all a matter of results. When you delivered sermons in the church, people slept. But when this auto driver drove, people were praying. They were praying. They were praying to me. So he's more useful to me. He was more useful to me than you. Now this is about a father with two beautiful daughters. They always wanted a son. Finally the wife gets pregnant and delivers a boy. And the man is very happy. He rushes home. And he's shocked to find a very ugly boy. He says, look, this can't be my child. Look, my daughters are so beautiful. Have you been playing behind my back? Have you been fooling behind my back? He says, not this time. Now, this is a joke about a clever boy. There's a woman who takes her lover home, and her 9-year-old son comes home, and she discovers, he sees that something funny is happening. He hides himself in a closet in the bedroom. And after some time, the husband turns unexpectedly, and she hides this man, her lover, in the bedroom, in the closet. She doesn't know that the boy is there. And the boy says, well, it's dark in here. It's very dark. He says, yes. He says, I have a baseball. Do you want to buy it? Just $200. He says, what? Why should I buy a $10 baseball for $200? He says, my father is outside. Shall I open the close? He says, no, okay, your baseball is sold. So he pays him $200 for a $10 baseball. Now this happens again the following week. And the boy has gloves. He says, it's dark in here. And the priest says, and the man says, yes, yes. And he says, I have a pair of beautiful gloves. They cost $400. Do you want it? No, I don't want gloves. He says, yes, my father is outside. And he says, okay, and he pays $400. Now, this father is angry with the boy for some misconduct, because the school has told the boy, your son is guilty of misconduct, we want to punish him. You punish him. And he says, I'm going to take you to church where you offer a confession to the priest. So there is a confession booth, and there's only the priest. And the boy says, it's dark in here. And the priest says, stop that nonsense. This is not my territory. This is my territory. Now, here's a joke about an amazing 80-year-old man. He goes to the doctor for a checkup. The doctor can't believe how strong and healthy he is. He says, how are you in such good shape? And the old man says, I play a lot of golf. It's okay, golf, but that can't be the reason. That can't be the only reason. How old was your father when he died? He says, who told you that my father is dead? He says, oh, you are 80 years old and your father is alive. How old is he? Now, he's 100 years old. He played golf with me this morning. Wow, fantastic. How old was your father's father when he died? Now, who told you that my father's father is dead? My God, he is alive. Oh, so what does he do? Don't tell me that he was playing golf too. He said no, he couldn't, because he got married this morning. So how old is he? He's 125. Why was it necessary for your father's father to get married at 125? See, he made a girl pregnant, so he had to marry her. Now, here's a joke about mothers-in-law. It's also about Imran Khan. You know Imran Khan, who is now Pakistan's Prime Minister, but he was one of the great fast bowlers. Now, many years ago, he wrote a book and he accused Ian Botham and Charles and Alan Lamb. You know, they were two great cricketers. Ian Botham in particular was considered one of the great all-rounders. Now, he accused them of racism. Now, Botham and Lamb, you know, there was Cold War between them and Imran Khan. They never liked each other. So when Imran Khan accused them of racism, they sued him. They prosecuted him and they sued him for damages, a very large sum, something like 300,000 pounds or 400,000 pounds. But in court, Imran was asked to prove his charge of racism. He said Botham had described Pakistan as the kind of country to which you send your mother-in-law for 10 months. Pakistan is the kind of country to which you send your mother-in-law for 10 months. The judge asked Botham, did you say that? He said, no. And what did you say? No, I only said 6 months. So, but Botham and Lamb lost their case and they had to pay damages to Imran Khan. So that's a great triumph of Imran Khan. Now, this is about a speeding car. You know, there's a man in the US, he's chased by a police car because he's driving above the speed limit. He stops and the police car accosts him. And the policeman, he says, look, mister, you have been driving very fast. But I stopped you because that's my duty, but I have had a lousy day, I want to go home. Just give me one excuse for your driving so fast and I'll let you go. He said, 3 weeks ago my wife ran off with a police officer and I saw you in my rear view mirror and I thought you were that officer and you had come to return the wife to me. So I was driving very fast. So the police officer let him go. Now, have you heard of Norman Cousins? So he was the editor of Saturday Review, a great journalist. And he died of cancer, but when he was first detected with cancer, he was told that he had only 3 months more to live. And he was tired of medicines. He said, no, I don't want any medicines, I just want laughter. So he asked his family to bring him jokes. And the word spread and all his friends brought jokes. And the hospital room resounded with laughter. And the doctors and the other people couldn't believe it because this was a hospital room, he was supposed to be dying and it was full of laughter. But believe it or not, he recovered and lived for 10 more years. He eventually died, but he lived for 10 more years. And he says he survived for 10 years because of laughter therapy. So laughter is good for your physical, mental and social health. If you make others laugh, you'll not really enjoy it, but you'll go to paradise. Thank you.
But you cannot ask one question in the quiz. You said 2 jokes about 80 plus. You should not ask who the Rotarian is.
Who the Rotarian is?
We have quite a few Rotarians who are 80 plus in our club.
So there's no 80 plus man here who has a 100 plus father. Okay, and there's some other thing I'll find out. What's the joke about Rajnikant and Amitabh Bachchan?
You didn't say that.
No, that wasn't here.
Only Rajinikanth can answer that.
Why doesn't Rajnikant need a watch?
He
decides the time.
He decides the time. Oh, I think
that's a tie. Anyway, we'll give it to Sridharan.
Yeah.
Only one question? No, one more. You can't answer that again.
Oh, I see. Oh. The first time I am presenting something to Sridhar. So, now, there was this joke of Kushwant Singh and Scotch. He thought he would get more Scotch from an American ambassador. Who was that ambassador? Moynihan.
Rajan, yeah.
Chocolate is over, boss.
Going on.
Just note about having a 100-year-old father, not getting the assistant and the maid pregnant.
This, I think I managed some speed because there were many other jokes, but I thought I would exceed the time, but I think I've done fairly well.
Very good.
Request Karen Muthu to propose a word of thanks.
Thank you, Madhu. It's because you're speaking today, I've seen so many new faces, long lost relatives, hands, annex, etc. Yes, obviously. And Sujesh has confirmed as acting president that he will hold a special session on emojis just for you, to help you understand. On the return gift you give us, that you hold a session on how to use Hindi swear words with such aplomb. You use Maki with such a cool air that, even Tarur would have been shocked. I was only surprised that we had a few young ladies, Shamla and they would get affected. But thank you, and thank you all for coming.
This meeting of the Rotary Club of Madras is adjourned.
Very good.
Fantastic. So I think we should have another music now, like